Happy Sunday, everybody. Today we are looking at the Atlas GP40-2Ws in the new version 2 DCC frame. Alrighty, so jumping right into this. Honestly, short story long, these are excellent locomotives, and I have been super happy with them. And to be honest with you, it kind of was a thorn in my side. I purchased these thinking I was going to, I purchased the first one thinking I was going to run into the same problems that I had with my GP40 and GP39-2. I have several lengthy videos and reviews on those engines that I put out in the past, and the struggles that I went through on those engines. And after doing some repairs and getting that all handled, they really turned out to be excellent running locomotives. So I wanted to take a couple of tries at the new stock coming out from Atlas to see if maybe they fixed some of their issues. And I ended up picking up 9590 kind of in that time frame. And within, 2 or 3 hours of running the locomotive, I was very excited with the performance that it was providing, how smooth it was running, and I almost immediately after that went out and purchased 9629 just to make sure that the quality from a different batch or run, from a different store may have different issues. So I wanted to get one from a different place and make sure that everything was up to snuff. And absolutely, I got 9629. I did run into a small issue with it, which we'll get into, but for the most part, they have been excellent locomotives. So lots to talk about when it comes to the price point that these are coming in at, the available electronics that you can put into them, some of the features that Atlas has added. So we got a lot to talk about on that side, but let's pull in take a quick look at the visuals, and then we will get into the really interesting stuff. So here we are up close and personal. And I have to say that it does pain me a little bit because I picked up 9590 thinking that I was going to do a quick review on it, resell it, and get into something else. And one of the downsides to being a reviewer is sometimes you get things that you just fall in love with and you refuse to get rid of. And I don't necessarily model Canadian National. I don't really model anything in particular. I just tend to fall in the BNSF type road name it's just my local thing, so I tend to gravitate towards it more often. But as I grow in the hobby, I'm always looking for interesting consists to put together. Pairs of engines that you don't normally see, different options. As you become more involved in the hobby, you're always looking for interesting things and prototypically accurate things that maybe are unusual, that draw people's eye, gives you a talking point on your layout, and these are one of those locomotives for me. This is a wide cab version of a GP40, and at least in my area, this is not something you see very often. This is kind of something you see north of the border. And there's a little bit difference in, the area behind the cab. I'm not quite sure what that is called, but there's kind of a porch there, and then there's no dynamics installed on this, so that's an interesting thing. The locomotives in my area, I live on the plains of Montana, and the mountains are just north of me. And so, yeah, everything out here, old stuff, new stuff, all has dynamics on it. So, interesting to see these type of locomotives in the configuration they're in. So, despite them not being something that I would normally gravitate to, I really like the oddity that these locomotives kind of are to have on my layout. They're a good talking point. So, as we look in on this, I do have a couple of things that I'm not terribly happy with. They are Canadian National units, and the few units that I do see come through my area almost always have, snowplows on the front. I don't know why these didn't come with snowplows. I think that should be something that they have. This particular body design, the GP40 that I have, the Montana Rail Link, has installed snowplows, so it's something they could have easily put on. At least in the versions that I got, nothing was in the box. So a little bit of a disappointment there. I can pull this back just a little bit. You can see right there that there are ditch lights on this unit. This is something that is kind of new to the version 2 DCC Atlases. A lot of them are coming with ditch lights, and that is a big addition. Historically, Atlas does not have ditch lights on any of their units. My Montana Rail-Link GP40, that GP39-2, they were both version 2 DCC frames, but still no ditch lights. So that is a nice addition. You can see that we have nose headlights on this. That's cool. I prefer nose headlights over cab headlights, just personally. That's something I like. And then as we're looking at the added detail, this is kind of a hybrid between what you would find on, say, a Kato or a lower-end locomotive or a scale trains. These tend to fall right in the in-between. There's some added detail, like you get nice hand grabs there up on the top of the hood. However, the ones that are a little harder to install, and in my opinion on the scale trains, they tend to stick out just a little bit too far for scale, but it's just kind of part of hand grabs. It's just the way it is. The ones that we use as steps to go up the front of the nose there are all molded in. Little more of a scale look in my opinion, and I prefer that, honestly. The steps and the handrails are painted from the factory, which is something I appreciate. As someone who is shaky, it is difficult to get that kind of detail added. Although it's not the worst thing in the world, it is a nice addition when it's done. Prototypically accurate. You might look at it and think it's odd, but Canadian National does yellow safety paint on the stairs and white handrails. Again, some more added features on there. The windows are all nice and clear. There's some in-cab detail. The bell hanging at the front there is really nice in scale. And then, yeah, everything else is well put together. These do come with sunshades that can be separately applied. Currently, I do not have a place outside of the jewel boxes to store these. When I get my display setup installed, I will be installing them. But you should know, going back into the jewel cases, there's not enough physical room for the width of the locomotive with those installed. So when you try to shut the jewel case, it will essentially damage those sunshades. So keep them off until you have these somewhere where you can put them, that you don't have to worry about taking them on and off. As we continue farther back, one of the things about these that I like versus the older Atlases is they definitely have the handrails firmly attached and they are sturdy, which is really nice. I've complained a lot about older Atlases in the past. All you got to do is look at them the wrong way and their handrails pop off and you readjust them. This is not the case for these. They are very well put together. As you look down, notice there's no red paint on the fuel caps. A little bit of a disappointment, seeing as how they went through all the effort to do everything else, but honestly not the biggest deal. One thing about this, take a look at the left and right hand truck. They're nice and level across the entire area. You'll notice this with a lot of Atlas locomotives as well as some other GP locomotives. Because of the way they attach the plastic to the bottom of the truck, they never tend to get them really nicely leveled. The older GP40 that I had, the Montana Rail-Link, has this problem. These are well put together and the trucks look absolutely solid. So I'm not sure if they increased the density a little bit on the plastic or whatnot to make it a little bit stiffer, but it seems to be much better off. So that is a nice little addition as well. As we continue down the side, the side panels are all properly, have good depth to them. Paint is nice and even. Everything looks nice that way. The small added detail with the decals and that type of stuff, everything's really good. Not a whole lot of small text on here to read, so that's not the biggest deal. No dynamic up top, like I said, and the fans are pretty much standard for all the Atlases. A little bit of added detail here and there, hand brake and what have you. And the rear lights are kind of in a different position than normal. But honestly, really nicely put together locomotive, and I think Atlas did a pretty darn good job. There is one other thing that I am a little bit disappointed with. Seeing the way they put this frame together compared to some of their other ones, I'm not sure if this frame shares some other newer locomotives that are coming out. But if you notice right there, right behind the fuel tank, part of the frame is visible, and it kind of takes away from the look of the locomotive. It wouldn't have taken much to chop that off nice and square and gotten it out of the field of view. Also notice there are no pickups visible. That's a nice addition, and the body is nice and low to the frame. So the monster truck issue that we dealt with on the Dash 8 CWs is not the case with these. They are perfectly put together. Accumate front and rear. Realize that's kind of an Atlas thing. I would prefer microtrains. I might even convert these at some point because I do plan to not get rid of these now. However, for what these units are used for, I have zero complaints. They latch up together perfectly. I've never had them come disconnected. And for the switching application that I think they are really built for, they work flawlessly. They connect to everything nice and easy. So honestly, I don't have any complaints that way. Excuse little hairs here and there and a little bit of dust. I have been pushing these locomotives hard for the last couple weeks. They've had a lot of time on the layout just to make sure that my initial thoughts on these are what I still think now. So let's go ahead and jump back out, and we're going to start talking about the electronics on these. Alrighty, so these come in 3 variations. You can get them DC, you can get them DCC equipped, and you can get them with a Loksound board pre-installed. That is the version that I purchased these. Both of them came with Loksound pre-installed, but knowing what I know about this, I'm going to make a couple of quick points. The DCC ready versions of these should be very reliable. I think they have the pickups well put together on these. They function flawlessly through all of my turnouts, and due to some issues that I have had with some of the older Loksound boards, whether you are running a DC board on this or a other DCC board such as Digitrax, NCE, or maybe even I forget it. It's the ESU, not the Loksound, but the Lokpilot. Excuse me. Any of those boards, I believe, are going to function flawlessly on these. The one issue that I ran into was on 9629, and it seemed like it had pickup issues here and there. I tore the thing down and noticed that the wire that is soldered to one of the pickups was loose, and so quick dot of solder on there, got that reconnected, and ever since then, 100% flawless. I have specifically stayed away from my Fix-It tool, which is Atlas Conductilube. I have now put 218 logged hours on these units, and I have yet to put any sort of Conductilube on the pickups. I really wanted to test these things hard because I have had some scathing reviews about Atlas stuff in the past. So I have really been pushing these units hard, and I wanted to make sure that I could thoroughly give my approval on these should I decide to do so. So as of yet, I have yet to put any Atlas Conductilube on these, and I have very few pickup problems. So when I start adding a little bit of that here and there, the onesie twosies, the sound dropouts here and there, that's all going to go away. These things are electrically really well put together. The other reason that brings me to tell that these are much more reliable than the older ones, like I said, I have put a lot of hours on these units to make sure the motors did not fail in the same way that my GP40 and my GP39 did. I have ran these at slow speeds, pulling heavy loads. I've ran these at high speeds, pulling heavy loads, just to make sure everything is sound. Now, I have Loksound decoders installed in these. They came from the factory that way. Something you should know, Loksound V4s had a little bit of they're not as electrically sound as the new modern V5s. And I've tested them side by side before on the same unit engine, moving the decoders back and forth. And dirty track can definitely upset version 4 Loksounds a little bit more than version 5. Now, I also tested some factory Atlas boards. And for those of you who don't know, the boards that come in these units are not particularly the unlocked Loksound boards like you would buy separately. They are in ecosystem Loksound boards, so you have to use factory sound files on them. Now you can jump between different factory sound files, but you can't use the open source ones that you can on all the other boards. So in my experience, I have noticed that the Atlas factory boards are a little bit more finicky, much like the version 4 Loksound boards, than the newer Loksound 5 boards. And I don't know if these have been updated to be a little more similar to the version 5 boards. They're still locked into the ecosystem where you have to use factory sound files, but they definitely have the better electrical connection like a Loksound V5 would have. And so I don't know if that's the case or not. I just know that electrically these function flawlessly. So either the boards got upgraded a little bit, or Atlas has really been working on making sure their electrical pickups have gotten a lot better. Either way, I have no way of verifying it. I just know that these are flawless when it comes to that, and it is very much appreciated, because sound locomotives and shoddy pickup, it can really ruin the fun factor for you. Now, I want to do a little bit of configuring on these, because the sound files on these are excellent. Let's go ahead and I'm going to pause here, get off the microphone, let you guys listen to this, and then we'll come back into the mic here for more. Alrighty, hopefully everybody can hear me. We are going to fire these up. All right, so hopefully all that sound made sense to you guys and could hear it properly. Things I always bring up. Horn, bell, all accessible while the engines are technically silent, so that's a nice little touch. As well as the one downside that I always bring up with Loksounds currently is if you have the compressor running or something to that nature, Function 8 will not immediately mute the machine. You have to wait for that stuff to finish playing through its function. I hope they fix that in the near future, but it is what it is. The one thing that is really above and beyond on these units is the slow speed control. The motors are very powerful and they function flawlessly. Absolutely what you would consider one tie at a time. Working in consist, all the little nitty-gritty type of stuff totally works its way out. A single unit sometimes can be a little bit jittery, especially at super slow speed. You get two of these running together, they complement each other perfectly, and they function flawlessly. Headlight is on. It's going to look a little bit dim because of the studio lighting, but absolutely really acceptable for N scale. It's not a TCS, but it does function pretty well. Inside the lock programmer, however, the nose light, the headlight in this case, actually is your auxiliary light. Because of the way the light pipe works, you have to go in and make a couple of changes. So to have your headlight come on and off like that, like a prototypical halogen light, where they kind of get bright as you turn them on, you have to go in and mess with your auxiliary light, because the headlight is actually mapped to your ditch lights. And as I move this forward, you will see that not only did the headlight brighten up a little bit, but the ditch lights came on as well. I have these automatically set up to be dim at stop and get bright And in the case of the digital lights, turn on when the engines automatically move. That's something that I always change in the CVs. Speaking of CVs, these engines are speed matched to one another out of the box. I am running a custom speed curve on these just to make them a little more usable as switchers, but same exact values in either locomotive. So easily speed matchable. Everything is just copy and paste between the two engines and flawless. Everything functions as it should. So when it comes to higher end locomotives, I think that's really how it should be. And good decoders, it's just simple. And that is a big selling feature, because when you start getting a lot of locomotives, speed matching everything gets to be a pain in the butt. So it's nice to just be able to copy and paste settings between locomotives and everything just functions. So A+ on that Atlas. I think you guys did a great job. Also forgot to mention, very little cab light bleed. The lights are plenty bright in my opinion, and a little bit here in the corner, but the complexity of the light pipes on these and being able to keep the cab as dark as they do, I really give them credit for that, because kind of a crazy light pipe setup they got going on in this engine. So well done, Atlas. Very much appreciated. So we kind of talked about how usable the engines are, and good slow speed control, excellent lighting. The sounds are really on point. These are a game changer when it comes to switchers, in my opinion, because you don't have the random cutouts going through turnouts, that type of thing. I mentioned in the past, GPs can be a little bit finicky just because of the wheelbase. It seems like they struggle through turnouts more than others. These things are absolutely locked in, and honestly, these have kind of ruined me a little bit for other locomotives. They are so good that I have really started to enjoy doing switching and that type of stuff. And unfortunately, I just don't have the capability and the steadiness at N scale to do it. It really has me, unfortunately, wanting to build a small switching layout in HO so I could do a little bit of switching, because I could physically manipulate the couplers a little bit better. I'm just unfortunately too shaky to actually do it readily in N scale, and I'm readily enjoying it, so I kind of want to do that now, but that is a side point. But anyway, very much enjoying switching with these engines. Pulling short locals is a lot of fun. Running them into my couple of sidings is an interesting little thing to do. I'm really enjoying that, and it's mainly because these things are so locked in and so trouble-free. There's also this thing with some engines where you come to a stop and they just lose power right when they come to a stop, and then you got to go touch them to get them to move. It's kind of a thing in some cheaper GP locomotives. These absolutely don't deal with that, and especially running in consist, they are so locked in. I just can't say enough good things about these locomotives, and I honestly recommend people go out and buy them regardless of what the price is. But we do kind of need to chat about the price and kind of take that into consideration. I wish I had a good working relationship with some of these manufacturers so I could get these things earlier, so these reviews could possibly come out before everything is sold out. However, there's not a whole lot of Canadian nationals left out there in the wild, but there's some MEC, Pan Am. I know there was some at Yankee Dabbler for a relatively good price. I haven't seen many DCC or DCC ready locomotives still out there, but when we're talking price to performance, I took some notes when I first got these. It seemed like the DCC ready engines were going for about $90. The DCC equipped were going for $130, which I think is overpriced, mainly because I do believe that the DCC equipped locomotives from Atlas are still coming with NCE decoders. The micro direct style boards are about $32 anywhere else online. So in that particular situation, I would recommend buying the board separately and installing it yourself. The cabs on these come off really easy, the entire body comes off really easy. It just slides right off, much like a Kato, and the board just is a quick push to the forward position, and it comes right off, and then you slide in your DCC board. Some of the easiest out there to get functioning, or even converted for that matter. So absolutely do your own DCC conversion if that is something you're interested in doing. Also, I would maybe look at a Lock Pilot board for it. About the same price as an NCE. You get back EMF. Little bit harder to program, but probably a smoother running decoder. The Digitrax one is out there. It would also have back EMF. They just tend to be just a little bit more expensive. That being said, if you're buying into one of these at $90, kind of getting into the $120 price range, unfortunately, when these came out, Lombard had them for a screaming good price, $170 with a Loksound installed. And that's a lot of value. That is honestly industry changing in my opinion. Now, these are now currently going in the ones that are still available for about $190. I think if you looked, you could still maybe get these for the $180 if you had a sale or something you were catching. That kind of price point is what I like to see. I have mentioned it a few times that Atlas is being very aggressive with their pricing with these new units. I've been looking at some of their pre-order pricing on Train World, and Train World tends to be just a little bit more expensive than some of the other places, so they can kind of give you an idea of what the actual going rate's going to be. And other than some newer releases that are pushing the $200 range, a lot of them are in this $180 to $190 range. And honestly, the usability of these things is up there with Scale-Train's locomotives. They're a little bit nicer put together than, say, Kato on the outside. And so they're really falling as a good in-between in there. And as these become more popular, as Atlas has more of them out, the market becomes a little more saturated with these things. That's going to push the manufacturers or the resellers to bring them down in price a little bit more. And I think we're going to see that $170 to $180 price point for all of these new Atlas units coming out kind of be the norm in the GP range. And that's going to put a lot of pressure on other manufacturers, Broadway to bring their prices down a little bit, and Scale Trains maybe to bring their prices down a little bit, and Kato, maybe they need to make their units a little more sound capable so they can start competing with this, because honestly, this is great for us as the consumer. These are changing the game in my opinion, and it really excites me because if these are so good and the next couple releases are really good, that is going to be a game changer, because no excuses at that point. If Atlas can get this stuff out relatively cheap on a consistent basis with good sound, easily convertible to sound should you want to do it. They already come with speakers pre-installed, so it's just a matter of slapping a board in there. That's great. I think Atlas really has the market pinned here, and if they can keep the pressure on, it is going to be great for us as a consumer. So at that $180 price point, absolutely all day, go out and buy these. You're not going to regret it. Even as a DCC locomotive, that $90 price point is okay. I would love to see it pushed a little bit lower, compete with the Kato, and put your own DCC board in there and enjoy it, because honestly, some of the best GP locomotives out there. You're gonna struggle to find good GP locomotives if you want to have a good switching pair or something on your layout. This is where you're going to find it right now. Hopefully in the future, some more of the GP units are coming out. I know they got a GP60. I want to say a couple of GP15s and different road name, road numbers, that type of thing. Several Alcos that are coming out. So honestly, good things to come from Atlas, and I wish I could have got this out sooner, but I really wanted to get the time on these things to make sure that Atlas has got their problems ironed out, and I do believe that they finally have got the manufacturing stuff figured out. So, grade A, awesome engines. Go out and get some. If you've been looking at them, you're not going to regret it. Thanks for stopping by, everybody, and I will see you this Monday for a little bit of a railside chat. Going to go over a little bit of what I had happen this week, and then talk about what I'm going to do going forward. So, thanks again. Bye now.